there's many reasons for Mark to be here, but the primary thing that caught my eye was I got an email, I guess came out on May 31st. It looks like the press release came out, and it says, the headline says, Marc Ambrosia comes out as gay with his new anthem, Gay and Proud, out June 23rd. I was like, wow. So I read a little further, and this gets very personal, but you said you don't mind sharing this.
Yeah, not at all.
It's here in the press release, so it's obviously not a secret. It's
intended for public consumption, I guess. Once you put it in song, there's sort of no escaping.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It says, and you're quoted as saying, I've known I was gay since I was 8 years old, and despite that, I never in a million years thought I would be able to come to admit that to anyone, let alone publicly. And I thought, that's pretty amazing. I mean, I came from a similar situation. I grew up in a very conservative home, and I same thing too. I told a few people, the close friends at the time and over the years, but I never would have dreamed that I'd be talking about it on the radio or like on social media. Well, I didn't know what social media was when I was a kid, but stuff like that. So you've taken it, and you since you are a musician, obviously, you decided to come out through music. And so how did you get from point A to point B?
Gosh, well, it took 20 years.
Yeah.
The idea of coming out, it just naturally seemed like through song would be the best, most comfortable way to do it.
Yeah.
Because music has been the way I've healed through pain. I started writing when I lost my best friend and my mom within 6 months of each other.
Wow.
That's how I started writing songs.
Yeah.
So that kind of began a precedent of when you're going through hard things, use music to help you through that.
Yeah.
And it just seemed that this burden of being in the closet that I had on my shoulder for 20 years, it just seemed like, well, I've worked through a lot of other things through music. Why not finally this?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how this song came to be. And, growing up, 20 years ago, things were a lot different. There was a lot less acceptance, a lot less representation.
Yeah.
Gay and proud was kind of like almost like a slur back when I was in like middle school, high school.
Yeah.
If someone was picking on you, they might say, "Oh, that kid's gay and proud."
Yeah.
There was the Gap actually used to have shirts that had had Gap written across the top of it, and everyone would say, "Oh, that stands for gay and proud."
Oh, wow.
So I went 20 years not being able to wear Gap clothes because I was afraid someone might, continue saying these things. And it was just something that, I knew in second grade because, and people say like, well, how do you know in second grade? Well, it's the same way kids know they're straight in second grade. You get your first crush and, what's the gender of that person? That's kind of how I knew. It's like I kept having crushes on boys, and it's like, why is this happening? And you have this internal struggle of clearly something must be wrong with me, or I'm sick, or I'm confused. And then, of course, what's going to happen if someone finds out?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And,
panic.
As an 8-year-old, it's total panic. And of course, you're like, I can't ever tell anybody.
Right.
Because you just feel like everything about you and what you're feeling is wrong and not normal.
So, as you're dealing with this, I guess in the last couple of years, did you start writing these songs, or like when did you start really dealing with it through song?
So, I think that things started happening a little bit more behind the lyrics.
Okay.
There were songs that I had put out that were definitely like love letters to guys that I knew, but they were expressive, but not necessarily revealing.
Right.
So, everything was very, Morse code.
It was just a love song. It could have been for anyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Could have been for anyone. But like one of my, most popular songs, Let Me Be Your Secret, people kind of hear that and like, oh, that's just a nice love song.
Yeah.
Well, the secret is,
Right.
and you can fill in the blank. That song was written for a guy that I knew. And, there were loads of other songs I had written. A song called Garden of the Vine, which was pretty much written about, a guy who, I was seeing at the time, and he was kind of ready to take things to the more public, level.
Right.
And I was very trepidatious about that.
Yeah.
And that relationship ended up not working out, for different reasons, but obviously it wouldn't have worked out had I not been able to come out of the closet.
If you're not on the same page, right?
Right. So, so there were a lot of things that were happening like that were, I was writing about them, but being very coded about them.
Right.
And then finally, a couple years ago, my grandparents celebrated their 60th wedding anniversary. And we had a bunch of, family and friends together celebrating the occasion. And I just remember thinking, like, man, I really want this someday for myself.
Right.
And I knew that the only way to get to that point was to, come out of the closet for one,
right,
and let myself have the opportunity to, have that kind of love story. So that's brought me to this point.
So obviously, publicly and professionally, you came out with the single. Had you come out to your friends and family before that, or is it kind of a mixed bag?
A little bit of a mixed bag. So, I guess it was November of 2021, I came out to my best friend Danielle.
Yeah.
And I was trying to tell her for probably 45 minutes until the words finally came out. And she pretty much knew what I was trying to say.
Right.
But she knew it was also important for me to say it myself,
right,
but
right.
she was definitely, she could see me struggling during this conversation. And she's like, Mark, I'm pretty sure I know what it is you're trying to tell me. And I just want you to know that you can tell me. And so I came out to her, and we were always close, but I'll tell you, it opened up so many doors of different conversation topics now,
definitely.
Because it was a wall of, that had been knocked down and all this newfound honesty behind it. And she was there when I told my dad, who was very, accepting of it. And, I was very nervous about that. And really that was all who knew for a while. I would probably say like 8 people knew, up until just, last month.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So this really was a big splash for you.
It was a big splash for me. My brothers always kind of knew. They used to, call me names and stuff like that,
right,
and say, oh, he's gay. And my mother would be like, no, he's not. And even if he was, I'd love him even more. So that was nice to know that, she's gone now, but it's nice to know that had I come out, she would have been accepting of it. And my brothers are cool with it. But, of course, back then it was like, we were all young, and to be gay was a less accepted thing,
exactly,
as we had said. And so it was kind of like a joke almost.
A pejorative, I think.
Right. Yeah, that's the right term for it. Yeah.
And now that the single's been out for a few weeks, well, first, how's the reaction been among people that you know?
Really, really positive. I had before the single came out, I had done a sort of coming out interview with a magazine, 47 magazine, and that came out, and that was kind of a big turning point where a lot of people were like, what?
Right.
So, and a lot of support after that happened, and a lot of excitement because they knew obviously that the song was coming in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And they were really eager to hear that and hear me tackle these things that they had just recently found out I had been dealing with all my life. And yeah, it was just such a overwhelming feeling of love and acceptance. And someone asked me, well, Mark, how does it feel now? And I said at the time, I feel like a prisoner who just came out of serving a long sentence. And I immediately said, no, that can't be right. And she said, no, Mark, I think that's probably exactly right.
Yeah.
And I think it is. That's kind of, I feel free. And as simple and as maybe corny as that sounds, that's as accurately as I can put it.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. I agree completely. Because, and obviously, it's a unique situation, and if someone, just like so many situations, unless you're in that situation, you can't necessarily understand 100% what it is. But no, I think you described it well.
Yeah, that was my experience with it. And, once the song came out, I heard from, my cousins were texting me, and I got texts from people I hadn't talked to in years, and they said, I read your article, I heard the song, I'm really proud of you and really excited. And the one interesting thing was one of my friends that I knew since second grade, and he was actually my first crush I ever had. Yeah. He reposted the article and just, said all of these really positive things. Right. And I was just thinking, oh my, if only he knew, he had a hand in this.
Yeah. Well, if he's listening tonight, maybe he does.
Maybe now he knows. Yeah, it was very, very nice of him, and I'm just so thankful for everybody who's expressed such kindness and acceptance to everything that's come out in the last couple of weeks.
Well, cool. Well, thank you for sharing your story both here and in the song.
Yeah, thank you for supporting it.
Of course. So we have more to talk about in the show, but let's hear the single we've been talking about. So this is Marc Ambrosia, Gay and Proud, Hometown Heroes on Delaware Public Media.